Nyree joins me today to discuss the business of employee care. Welcome to Connections Radio, Nyree, and thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Very well, thank you very much.
Lovely. That's good to hear. Could you please start by introducing your agency, Jack and Grace, and telling us what services you offer?
I didn't ask you how you were. That was
Oh,
really
how
rude.
rude!
How are
How
you?
rude! Oh, I'm great. Yeah, it's
Good,
Tuesday, I believe. The sun is shining. Spring is sprung. The grass is raised. I wonder where the birdies is. Um, very well. Yeah.
good,
Good to
good.
meet
Yeah, it
you.
is nice and sunny. Sorry, what was your question? I
I was
got caught
wondering if
up
you could
in.
introduce your agency, Jack and Grace, and telling us about the
Oh,
services that you offer.
yes, of course. So Jack and Grace, we do comms. So we always say that the first thing we do is figure out what is the actual communications problem, because I think it's always really exciting to jump to, we need a video or we need to do some social
Content.
media. Yeah,
Yeah.
what's the content? So we try and work with the organizations that we support to take a step back and figure out actually what is the job for comms. And once we've sort of figured out exactly who the audience is and what we need the audience to do to change, what we want to kind of get across to them, only then do we think about, okay, what is the right tactic? And then we can sort of help with whatever that right tactic might be. And it might very well be a video and some social media content, but it also could be some out of home advertising or radio ads, or like we try and pull together the right sort of mix of tactics for whatever the job is.
That's interesting. So it sounds like you really analyze the sort of pain points from a communications perspective within a company, and then you work from there. It sounds very strategy driven. Is that right?
That is exactly right. Yeah, yeah.
Lovely. And let's talk about your career background. How did you come to co-found communications agency Jack and Grace?
I re it was about 20 years ago that I was working to figure out how to get people to change their behavior to live more sustainably. So literally at this point, I was knocking on doors. It was part of a big kind of research project, knocking on doors, trying to gather data and to sort of talk to people about making small changes to their lives. So it could have been how to save water or save energy or not waste food as much. So 20 years ago, the kind of landscape around climate change and environment was quite different, kind of understanding of all that stuff was quite different. And then on that project, I sort of moved into the research side of things. So not knocking on the doors anymore, but kind of analyzing the data. And then from there moved into the communication side of things, like testing what communications interventions really work to change behavior, what moments in people's lives were people more receptive to change. And I found all of this so fascinating. And I've really carved out a bit of a career focusing on communications that shifts behavior. And I've worked inside organizations, in marketing teams, and then also uh, with agencies working with lots of different organizations. So, for example, tackling some really big issues, actually, like with the Samaritans looking at um, reducing suicide rates in rural communities, um, trying to encourage children to read for pleasure, kind of, and convincing adults that that's important as well. Um,
Tough call convincing the
it can
adults
be
to read for
really
pleasure.
tough.
I can't read for pleasure. I read so
It's
much
not
for
your bag.
work. I just can't read. I pick up a novel and I find I try reading a page and it just goes straight over my head. I end up reading the same page 5 times and I just give up. It's a
Yeah,
shame.
that's
I do like
you.
audiobooks though.
I love an audiobook and a podcast because you can sort of keep your
Yes.
hands free and do stuff at the
You can
same
keep you can keep
time.
fiddling and multitasking. I
Yes,
think it's particularly the females among the species. We do like to multitask, don't we?
very busy.
We're very
Well, I
busy.
mean,
Busy
do we
fools.
like it or do we have to?
I well, it's six of one, half a dozen of the other, really, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. But yeah, it was kind of big issues, lots of interesting things, fighting for the rights of older people, trying to encourage society to value older people more. This kind of communications and behavior change, it's taken me in lots of different kind of directions. And then I guess the other thing about being fascinated with how human behavior works is that I noticed all these, in workplaces, there are kind of the rules that are in your contract, And then there are sort of the rules that you just
The
absorb by
unwritten rules.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
So
leave
in
the
your
water cooler clean.
yeah, that should be a written rule, I think, don't you think? Like wash up your own mug,
Yeah,
all that stuff.
wash up your sodding mug.
Yes. But some of the stuff like in your contract, you'll have your working hours, but actually you figure out what the real working hours are by watching what everyone else is doing, and you
Yeah.
kind of see what's rewarded in the workplace. And stuff like not talking about salaries. Like that's not a rule usually to not talk about salaries, but it's kind of one of those unwritten rules. And I would say I worked really hard to follow all of the rules through my career. And then in 2018, I became a mum, and suddenly I found all of the rules, and especially the sort of unwritten expectations, really much, much harder to follow. And I really tried hard to follow. Like I tried probably like a really sad amount. I tried really hard to kind of follow the rules. And eventually, after a very long time, I realized that it wasn't me. I wasn't the problem. It was the rules just were no longer possible for me to kind of follow. And that led me on to getting really interested in how workplaces work and deciding to take the plunge and set up Jack and Grace to kind of unpick and rewrite some of those rules that I think a lot of us, for various different reasons, not just becoming a parent, find the rules don't actually make work work.
So, what are the fundamental employee care rules? We are doing the business of employee care today, that you follow or adhere to at Jack and Grace.
I suppose rule number one is try and unpick all the rules. So figure out, I think of those sort of unwritten rules a bit like microplastics in that they're sort of living within us. They're so embedded, we've inhaled them all, and you stop noticing that they even are rules. It's just what you do. So
Hmm.
job number one for my co-founder and I, and for anyone who works for us, was to sort of figure out, like, re-notice those rules and unpick them a bit, um, and then rebuild rules that work better. So some of the rules are great. I just think that they need updating. A lot of the ones we have for work probably need updating,
And they need to be
and
clear, don't they?
they
Really,
need to be really clear.
there's no good having all these nuanced. Oh, you ought not do that, but it's not actually official. Because that, how are you supposed to? And especially if you take a neurodiverse person, how are they supposed to work in a company culture like that, where there's just unwritten rules and nobody knows where they are and nobody talks about anything? It doesn't work,
Totally.
does it?
It doesn't work. I really like Brené Brown's line on this, which is clear is kind, and just
Yeah.
being as sort of clear as possible on what the expectations are. But we also don't say, I think quite often leaders want one rule for everybody. And actually, we are also different. And I don't think it's that hard, and we're sort of proving this to tailor your rules so everybody's clear what their sort of rules are, but that doesn't mean it has to be the same for everybody. So, an example, um, we offer, you know, how roles are usually full time, and then you have to put in a request to work part time or flexibly. So we've flipped that. So all of our roles are offered part time as standard. You can work full time, but you need to make a request just to sort of flip that norm on
Oh,
its
I
head a
like
little bit.
that. Yeah, I like
I
that. That's very upside down. I live quite upside down myself, so I like that. Just making little adjustments that can have a huge impact. What impact has that rule had on your business and your people's happiness?
Huge in terms of the people's happiness, and we measure business success by people, planet, and profit. So profit's great, nothing wrong with profit. We all love profit, but not at the kind of expense of people and planet. We value those things equally. So a key driver of our success is how people are feeling at work, how productive they are, and we all know happiness kind of leads to more productive people. Um, and it's really driven in terms of the sort of recruitment and retention. It's been a real asset. but also in terms of how people are able to work. I mean, we've managed to get people to come and work for us that if we had a more sort of old-fashioned structured model, they just wouldn't have been able to, and it would have been very difficult for them to find a role. And they're amazing, amazing talent. And we've managed to get them because we've got this kind of, I call it really, really bendy flexibility. So we're sort of seeing how bendy we can make the flex.
You flex until it snaps. Love
Well,
it.
if you're very supple, I'm not.
I've been doing yoga for years. I'm fine.
Oh, you'll be all right then. You can
Yeah.
touch your toes and everything.
I can do the splits, believe it or not.
Can you actually?
I can, yeah,
Oh,
but
that's
I
very
shouldn't
impressive.
because I'm getting old now and I'm starting to get hip pain when I break out the splits at parties and stuff because it's my party trick. So anyway, enough about that. It's sounding slightly inappropriate. Why is it important for businesses to look after their people?
For a business like us, people are the absolute lifeblood. So for me, having been through this experience of effectively being kind of excluded from workplaces because I needed more flex, um, I think there's a strong moral driver there. But actually, the business benefits have been amazing in terms of who we're able to recruit. I mean, I can never see a time that we'd need to get help from a recruitment agent because we just don't have any issues recruiting. We've sort of carved out this niche for anyone with a caring responsibility. They need flexibility, but also anyone with a neurodiversity. You just need a slightly different way of working, and anyone who wants a life in between, the hours at a desk. Um, so it's been really, really important for recruitment, but also for hanging on to people and the sort of continuity and experience that means we can kind of access. I mean, we get amazing, really experienced people that just would otherwise be shut out, certainly of our sort of industry in terms of comms.
How can we promote harmony across business success and employee satisfaction? How do you marry those up harmoniously?
I think it's a mindset shift amongst leaders of organizations in the first instance because you have to acknowledge that those things are intertwined, business success. And when most people talk about business success, they mean money. Like how's the, when people say to you, how's business, what they're basically saying is
They mean
how's the
profits.
money side? Yeah, how's your profit looking? And for us, profit is one of the three drivers of success, but we've also got the planet and the people element. And if you get the people element right, you will see the benefits in terms of productivity and profit. They are absolutely intertwined, but unless leaders really kind of look into that and the research is there, and embrace it, it does cause tensions if you're constantly putting those two things, people and profit, not in harmony, then it does cause kind of problems. But actually, if you can embrace the fact that the two things are intrinsically linked, then it can work really, really well.
Happy workers equal increased productivity, don't they? We know that. It's a proven
Yeah.
fact that happy people are more productive. They're also more loyal. They're more likely to stay in a job because I think, the recruitment industry is worth billions. And so many companies, because they don't get their people aspect right and the company culture right, they just have a revolving door of employees that they have to bring in. They have to pay a recruitment agency to train, to recruit. Then they have to pay to train them, then they get in the job, they don't fit the culture, they don't fit the atmosphere, they don't like the bright lights in the office or whatever it is, because the company won't make small adjustments to suit that individual. And out they go again, and they feel upset. The company's spent a fortune on training them and now has lost them. It doesn't work for anyone, does it?
It doesn't. And so often businesses' response to that is to blame the people who are leaving rather than thinking, I think we need to shift some stuff. I mean, I've worked in places where there's been that revolving door, and yet it's never, for some reason, the dots weren't joined up to think, okay, we need to change, we need to adapt. Most people really want to work hard and do a good job, like
Yeah.
most of us do, and we should make the rules for those people rather than for the often sort of imaginary employee who's going to take the mick and kind of stretch things too far, why are we building rules for them, particularly when so often they're just a sort of imagined potential consequence rather than a sort of reality?
It sounds like trust is a big theme here. The fact that you need to trust your
Yes.
people, trust that they will, if they work flexibly, trust that they will get the work done, even if they're not clocking in from 9 to 5. How can you encourage business leaders to trust the people they are employing from the offset? Because trust is a sort of thing that needs to be earned in a lot of scenarios. But how do you do that?
Trust is, you're so right. It's the kind of fundamental element. But I would suggest, and we do, people look at some of our more radical sort of policies, and to me, they're not radical. They're really they make really good sense and they're working really well.
You got an
But I
example?
guess, well, like the part-timer standard, like how,
Yeah,
people
sure.
say, how do you make that stack up? But also stuff like salary transparency. How do you kind of make that stack up? And the radical flexibility. So we expect people to take time in the working day for exercise or for caring responsibilities, encourage people to be really open about the fact that they might have to go and do the school run. And some of that can feel quite uncomfortable if you're sort of a more traditional kind of business mindset. But I would suggest that if you're not trusting your team, that is a different problem, and you need to
Yeah.
fix the actual problem rather than sort of trying to micromanage or insisting that everybody works, in the same way, because it just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. And I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. How do you control the not logging off aspect of this? Because the problem with flexible working that some people find is that they send emails at 11 o'clock at night or 4 in the morning because they've had 2 hours during the day that they've not taken because they've been doing the washing up, running errands, caring responsibilities. So they've caught up with their work in the middle of the night, which is fine. Some people do. We don't all work the same way. But what about that problem of never logging off and always being instantly contactable? And how do you control that within your company?
We try not to control stuff. So what we try and do is create a bit of a culture where people are empowered to and have the tools to and the sort of permission to not do that. And we do have a timesheet system so that we can see if people are working too much, because I think that is a real problem.
'Cause
And
that's a
obviously,
risk, isn't it? But
it's
working
a
too
risk.
much, definitely, because some of
Yeah,
us can get a bit carried away with our work, especially if we love our job.
totally. If you want to do a good job, particularly for us, we work for lots of different clients and they're all very ethical. So you want to see them succeed. And that can lead to problems like people working too hard or too much. But we really prioritize the kind of impact of the time spent at work, not the sort of presenteeism, not the number of hours.
The
And when
productivity.
people, the productivity, yep. And when people are working too, and the joy of it is that it's no longer just me and my business partner saying, it looks like you're working too hard. It looks like you're doing too many hours. We're not paying you to do those hours. Stop. It's coming from the team now. So other people are kind of checking each other. I think getting the culture right, it's not easy and you have to work at it and you have to kind of you have to foster it. But I think getting running a business is really hard, whatever way you do it. So you may as well do it in a way that's actually going to benefit your team and you and ultimately your kind of your bottom line as well.
And I'm interested, what in today's modern business world, what really matters to the typical employee, somebody that would come for a job with a CV to see you, what matters to that person in the workspace, in the culture? Yeah,
I can only speak for kind of the people who are coming to us. So we we only work for clients where we can see they're making a positive impact on people and planet. So for us, it's a lot of people who are looking for that kind of work where they want to work with ethical businesses and organizations. But the thing we are noticing more and more, from younger employees, but also from people who've sort of been pushed out of the workplace, is that flexibility. And within that, it doesn't have to mean, that definitely doesn't have to mean working from home. It doesn't have to mean anything. It's just flexibility in a way that suits them. It might be that their preference is to work kind of longer days but fewer days. So to do kind of compressed. It might be that it's a job share. It might be that it's part-time, and we let people choose which days and how many days they do, and then we build the job around them rather than the other way. It's always struck me as really weird. So this is one of the things we do that people are like, well, that's ridiculous. How can you make that add up? That's mad. You build jobs around what people want to work. But to me, the really mad thing is that we've randomly decided that jobs fit into 37 and a half hours a week, and that's like the rule. That is absolutely insane to me. But no one questions that. So yeah, we
That's
chuck that one
funny.
out the window and we build the jobs. If someone wants to work 2 days a week, we'll figure out and we'll make that work.
Fantastic. Nyree Ambarchian, I don't want to leave it there, but I've got to leave it there, I'm afraid, because we're running out of time. So thank you for joining me on the business of employee care. Where can we follow you online or get in touch for services or more information?
The best place and the most entertaining place would be LinkedIn to find us if you have a little
Most
look for
entertaining.
most entertaining. We tend to do all of our on a Tuesday I issue a regular pelvic floor check. So if you haven't done your pelvic floors on LinkedIn, now's the moment. This is your reminder to do your pelvic floors.
Okay,
But yeah,
thank you.
LinkedIn's a good place to find us.
Fantastic. So what's the name on LinkedIn? Is it
Jack and Grace.
Jack and Grace on LinkedIn? We'll see you on LinkedIn. Once again, Nyree, thank you for joining me today and have a lovely day.
Thank you so much. You too.